Welcome back, everyone. I'm Zell, and today we're looking at the Medford Production Praetorian. And I know many of you are going, oh my goodness, why in the world does Zell have a Praetorian on his desk? Well, there are two reasons I have a Praetorian on my desk. First off, BladeHQ asked me to look at it. So I was like, okay. And at first my thought was, well, I kind of would like to see a Praetorian, but I know I'm not really going to be interested in the knife. And then my next thought was, after BladeHQ shipped it my way, was, oh, well, this is really going to seal the deal. I'm going to have to review a Medford Praetorian. I'm going to have to give it that review that's going to make Gold Greg all mad at me. That's Greg Medford, the guy that owns Medford Knife and Tool. And I'm probably killing my relationship with BladeHQ. But I soldiered on when the knife showed up. And we'll talk about my experience as we move along. And for you guys that like to watch 2 or 3 minutes of a video, and sorry about that, and get all the knife pouring in and then click off, if you are at all interested in the Production Praetorian or the Scout, Praetorian Scout that's out this year, I implore you to watch, because there are some things that you need to know about buying a knife made in this manner and in this style that will make your experience a lot better if you're well informed before the knife arrives. It's a subject that we're going to talk about more in depth here very soon, but we'll talk a little bit about it today with the Medford Production Praetorian. Now, before we get too deep into the knife, let's look at what Medford sends you. We have a nice box that has the Medford logo on top. We actually have everything right there about the knife, including the fact that it is 159 of 200. Big old made in the USA on this end. And there's a SKU over there somewhere. Yep, there it is. And you open it up. We'll set the paperwork aside for a minute. You got a little baggie for the knife. You got your little silica pack thingies. And then you have this little pouch. I love what Medford has done, how they have screen printed this. I like the kind of softer screen print that they've done here. I know it doesn't look soft on camera, unfortunately, but it is not that super bright that it looks like on camera. It's kind of a muted. I just really like it, guys. You will like it too. Another thing they've done here that is a nice touch. We had Medford Knife and Tool, medfordknives.com, with the phone number and 100% made in the United States on the dog tag that appears to be a dog tag that's been sent through an actual dog tag pressing machine. Pretty cool, nice touch. Open it up, and there we got the card. We'll look at that, and it's just a single knife pouch, but it's a really nice one. It's a little smaller than a lot of the pouches people are using, and kind of like it. In fact, I really like it. Here we have Medford Knife and Tools business card, and that's Greg Medford's business card, and actually it's really nice. In fact, he must be doing pretty well, because I can't afford a business card that nice. I wish I could. Greg, wherever you had these business cards made, please let me know, because that is sharp. I like it a lot. Anyhow, that is all the information you need to know there. And then you have the, oh boy, yeah, the warranty. I implore you to read the warranty. Be mindful of the warranty, and also be mindful that taking apart your knife, and it says explicitly in the warranty stuff. Now, do note this. Greg actually signs these things, and that's a very nice touch. Very, very nice touch. I appreciate that, Greg. Okay, here's the deal with the warranty. I am not telling you to do this. And, you know, if you go over to Nick Sabash's channel and look at the teardown of one of these knives, I think he had the Micro Praetorian. He sent it off to Siberia to have it taken apart. And that's just a bit ridiculous, because Greg's not going to chase you down and kill you. However, from what I read and what I understand out of the Praetorian and all the Medford knives, is if you take it apart and cannot get it back together in the proper order, in the right way, Greg is going to not work on your knife. And that's kind of his prerogative. There are a lot of knife companies that do this. Spyderco, if you send them a box full of parts, they'll charge you to send it back. And that's how they used to do things. I don't know how they do them now. There are other knife companies that will do the same thing. They do not want you to be taking this knife apart and then not knowing how to put it back together, and you're like, oh my god, well, I can take a knife apart and put it back together, it's not that big a deal. And yes, maybe you can, but believe me, as a guy who's done customer service for knife companies, there are a lot of people that do not know the intricacies of taking a knife apart and putting it back together. There have been many, many, many knives that I have picked up from the mail place to do service work. I have a set of tools, or had a set of tools, in my truck. Real basic set of torque stuff and whatnot. And I would put the knife back together, sitting there in the driver's seat of my truck, check everything, make sure it was sharp, put it back in the box, walk back in and hand it to my CMRA and send it back to the customer. It was 3 minutes worth of fiddling with the knife for me, and it was too much for that individual. And that's one of those things. Not everyone is inclined to know how to work on the knife. And now we're talking about other things, but I thought that warranty deal was pretty important. If you don't know what, and I'm telling you, don't take it apart, but if you don't know what you're doing, send it back to Medford Knife and Tool. They will take care of the knife. They will set it right. They will do those things to make sure the knife works the way it should. Now, we have a knife here that's 4.94 inches in closed length. It's got a handle thickness of 0.63, a height of 2.1, putting it right in there with the Manix 2, maybe even the Manix 2 XL, as far as all those dimensions. And it weighs 7.5 ounces. This is a heavy-duty, hard-use knife. No doubt about it. So, let's do a little bit of size comparison, and we have a Rat Model 1. We'll get our Delica out here as usual because, well, it's a Delica and everybody's got one of those, or at least knows what it looks like. Get those two off the table, and we'll bring out some stuff that's kind of in the same category. We got a Liang Ma XV, and a Goody Van Poppel is probably closer. The Goody Van Poppel is a very hard-use, heavyweight knife as well, with a low saber grind. This one's flat, where this one is hollow. Does make a difference. We'll talk about that in a minute. We don't have as heavy a piercing point on Goody's knife as we do on Greg's knife. But, you know, that's all in the decisions you make to make that heavy-duty knife a little more EDC friendly. And that's what Goody has done. He has made his Ferox a little more EDC friendly as far as the tip of the knife. But that's a decision you as a consumer has to make, because whenever you go, and we'll start looking at the blade now, whenever you go to the Medford Praetorian, you've got a really low hollow grind, and you've got a flat ground tip, which leaves you a very thick, very heavy piercing tip that, just be flat honest with you, this is a knife you can take out and you can use it to dig with. This is a knife you can use as kind of a, I'm not going to say you should do it, but it could be used as a pry bar. It could be used as a small hatchet. This is a knife that if you are planning on spending some time out in the outback or in the woods and you want a folder to do some of those things, this is probably your tool. But anyhow, we got 3.75 inch blade with about 3.75 inch cutting edge. It is made of D2. I really like the finish that Greg's got. It's a production Praetorian. The biggest thing that I can see that makes this different from most of the other Praetorians and makes it a production knife is the grinds are done in a machine. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. Hand ground. People will fuss all 7 ways to Sunday about hand ground. This is put in a machine and ground, which means it's probably jigged up, got the specific size wheel, specific angles, specific distances, and there you go. You end up with your blade grind. And people will say, well, I like a freehand ground blade. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Because something that you may not realize is a bunch of people that have hand ground blades on their knives are still using jigs of some sort. It just makes sense and makes a better knife for you whenever we're building many of the same model. You know, look over Jeremy, A Simple Little Life. He's got jigs built for various knives that he makes. Now, they're not intense jigs like, you know, somebody else might make, but they do make things easier for the knife maker and make a more consistent knife for you, the consumer. Now, here we are fully machine ground. Our little fuller, if you will, there, cupped little area there to help get the knife open is pretty nice. I actually like how it feels. We have Medford machined into the blade, the Medford logo, and a D. Not sure exactly what the D means, but it is on all of these production Praetorians. And we have big jimping all the way across the back. Now, this big jimping is one of those things. If I put my hand around the knife, the big jimping doesn't bother me. However, if you've got office hands, it's going to bother you. I'll just put it like that. You could possibly, on some of those edges, strike a ferro rod. I'm not exactly sure. But anyhow, D2, 3.75 inches long, 0.19 thick, big old blade. And the last thing I want to show you is something that really turned my opinion of the Praetorian. Whenever I first got this guy, I was trying to get it broke in, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. And look at this. This thing will cut. One of the first things I did with it is I had it up in the shop, had a bunch of cardboard boxes up there, and I was like, oh boy, I've got that 0.19 thick blade. It's the only knife I had laying there. I had some others in the drawer, but it was the one that was laying easiest. And I picked it up, and I sliced through a couple of cardboard boxes. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. It ain't supposed to work that good. Now, I'm not telling you that it's going to slice like a Delica, because that's not what it's designed for. But it cut the cardboard boxes without issue. Now, would I have wanted to cut up 6 or 8 TV boxes with it? Well, no. Because, you know, it is a thick blade. But it was plenty sharp enough, and that hollow grind is plenty thin enough. Let me grab the calipers. We'll see just how thin it is. Grabbing our handy-dandy calipers. And that is metric, guys, so let's go. Wow! Okay, that right there. Read that. See that? Okay, you know how I do this. That is, all I'm saying is that it's less than 20 thousandths. You can take out of what you will. But that was a measurement right off the flat of the knife. And yeah, you guys see that? Yeah. Okay, that's why it cuts so well. Because they're grinding it like a demon. That is freaking beautiful. And let's look at the tip too. Because I'm pretty sure the tip is quite a bit thicker. Hell, it's not. Okay. So, there you go. This thing will cut, in the words of, it will cut, in the words of Doug McCarter. And it does a pretty dadgum good job of it with that hollow grind and this bit thicker piercing end with the tip. And I was really impressed. Now, let's move on along to our pause and read card, and we'll get back and we'll talk about some of the more important things you need to know about moving into a knife like this. Alright, mechanically, this thing is running on phosphor bronze bushings. Now, I don't know if I can do this with the camera right there, but that is phosphor bronze bushings. It has that hydraulic feel that you get out of a full-size Sabenza. It's not, you know, it's not bearing smooth like you would get with a Wii or a Riot. It's amazingly bushing smooth. Now, did it come like that out of the box? No. And we're going to talk a little more about that here in a minute. But the other mechanical things, we are stop pin on the blade. There is no internal stop pin. That is not a stop pin. Whenever you stop pin sets there, you open the knife, stop pin sets there. Rests against the titanium here, G10 here, and it's stable as heck. You can go out and whack on, you can chop down trees with this thing, the way I feel about it. The other thing is we are titanium on steel for the lock bar. And that gets into some of the stuff where we need to have a little talk. This knife is built to be a hard-use knife. Part of Greg Medford's philosophy, part of Strider's philosophy, part of used to be Hinderer's philosophy, and many others, and even many others today, is that the titanium on steel makes for a solid lockup. I can't disagree with him there. I think that Staz23 is going to go over that a little more in detail in his review, because he has probably more technical experience on the production knife end of it. I've got a little more experience on the knife making end of it. What happens whenever you carbonize, whenever you leave a titanium on steel, is initially you have a fair amount of lock stick, and man, do I mean some lock stick. But if you're patient with the knife and you break it in, you end up with a knife that still may have a little lock stick in it, but in this case, in the case of mini knives, that little bit of lock stick is good, because that means you're securely open. That knife, that blade is not going anywhere because it's kind of stuck there. As long as it's not lock stick that makes it hard to disengage or makes it impossible to disengage, and as you can see from this one, it's not. Now, whenever it first showed up, yes, it had a fair amount of lock stick, and it took several days of me working the knife quite a lot to get the lock stick worked away and to get the smoothness into the bushings. That's one of the things to know about buying a knife built like this, buying a Strider, buying an older Hinderer, and many other brands and styles out there that are built in this manner. They are not built to be, well, like this Liang Ma, which is, guillotine style. I didn't get that on camera, did I? It could kill you. It could chop your thumb right off almost. Yeah, that's a thumb, not a thumb. New words for that appendage. That, I don't know, just very good. Let's talk about ergonomics, and then we'll talk about a couple more things and wrap this up. Ergonomically, this knife is meant to be held like this, and in this grip, it's great. In this grip, it's great. That stuff could be a little sharp for you, maybe. Not for me, but, if you've got office hands, it may be sharp. Probably be a little sharp for our friend Stazza with his hands. Getting it around here, no problem. Getting it in your reverse grip, no problem. Pinch grips, friggin' beautiful with those big fullers. My goodness, you could do some good there. Just absolutely ergonomically very, very good. And in the pocket, you guys all want to see it in the pocket, don't you? Let me grab the Levi's here, and we'll just see how big this knife is, because it is a big one. But see that nice smooth spot right there where it's been touched by the grinder or something to get the texture of the G10 away? Well, that's beautiful, because it goes down in the pocket real nice. Whoop, right down in there. Greg was thinking about you. And you got some knives sticking up, absolutely, but this thing weighs 7.5 ounces. It ain't going nowhere. And if you drop it, you're going to know it. This is a knife that I would carry to work, because whenever I go to work, running around, getting close to things and whatnot, I have lost a lot of small light knives, because they're not a handful of small light knives, because they flick themselves out of the pocket, and then you don't hear them amongst the various machines running. So, do like that. And now, first let's talk very seriously about what to expect whenever you get one of these, or a Scout, or many other brands of knives that are made in a more traditional manner. First thing, you're going to expect to have some lock stick. If it's titanium on steel interface, maybe a lot of lock stick, and you're going to have to work that out. It is a break-in period. The bushings are not going to be smooth right away. It's going to take some time and some effort on your part to get them broke in. Now, what I did with this is I went against Greg's rules, and I slid some lightweight nano oil down in there, and I kept the lock face cleaned off and let that nano oil kind of drain. I set the knife like this on the desk while I was watching some shows, let the oil kind of drain, and then took some acetone and wiped the lock face off to keep that oil off of the lock face and kept it clean. And the thing has broke in extremely well, very hydraulic smooth. The other thing I did that is against Greg's rules but worked out beautifully well is I took some stuff called Tough Glide, and I used Tough Glide on purpose and put it just a very, very small drop down in the detent hole. Why? Because I want that Tough Glide to help me make this detent ball track and make it smooth and make it work well. And Tough Glide did just exactly that because of the way it works. Part of it gets impregnated in the metal. So very cool there. Now, breaking in the lock. There are two distinct methods for breaking in the lock. One is to take graphite from a pencil and put it on your lock face, and that is a sort of lubrication to help you get that lock mated up. Other people use Sharpies. I used a little bit of both over about a week or so, and it has come together beautifully. Is there still some lock stick? Yes, but it's the lock stick I want on this knife. And I know much of you are going to argue with me, but if I flick this knife open, I want to hear that little bit of lock stick, because I want to know that this thing is locking up very tightly, and it does. Now, will that little bit of lock stick wear in over time? Maybe. But if it does, I still know that it's locking up very well. Now, the last section of this video, and I know we're running along here, friends, but there's just a lot to talk about with this style of knife building, and the last thing I want to talk about is, what would Zell do different? Well, really, guys, there's not a lot that Zell would do different. If I were making the hard use knife like Greg is, the very few things that I would do different was I probably would bring the grind up near here, near the bottom of that fuller. Bring it up just a little taller. Keep it very thin across the edge, just like they did, but just a little taller to give it that slight bit better slicing ability. Now, that's not a huge thing here, but I would be trying to make a knife that kind of rides the difference between super hard use and everyday carry. The other thing I might do, and this is a might, I might go back down to 4mm blade stock. However, with the higher grind, I might leave the nearly 5mm blade stock. I probably wouldn't make a Tanto, and Greg has models that don't have Tantos, but that's kind of a personal thing. I'm not a huge fan of the Tanto, even in the tactical knife, or that style of Tanto in the tactical knife. I love the stock pin in the blade. I think it's plenty secure going up against that titanium and the G10. I don't think there should ever be a problem with that. Striders have been doing that sort of thing for years, and they work just fine. The one other thing that I might consider changing, and this would probably be price dependent and customer dependent. The one I might go with a stainless in here for the lock bar. Make the knife weigh a little more, a slight amount more, but it would have less lock stick, because I know many of you will freak out over the lock stick. But those are about the only things that I would do different. I might soften the jimping up just a hair, and that would just be because I'd want Stazza to be able to use a knife, you know. I might use some, no, I wouldn't. For this knife, I would not use titanium screws. I would buy the best stainless screws I could get my hands on, and I would put a pivot in it that I could put a Allen head or an Allen key in, and that's one other thing I would do. And one thing that Medford does on many of the knives, I would have Allen screws all the way across. I wouldn't be using the Torx for a hard use knife because it just doesn't make sense whenever the Allen screws are much easier for a person to get a hold of it and more prevalent in toolkits. And that's about it, guys. I'd like to thank BladeHQ for sending this guy along. It really opened my eyes and made me realize that the Medford knives aren't what Nick Shabazz makes them out to be. I mean, are they an overbuilt pry bar? Well, yes, they are. Are they as ridiculous as many reviewers will say? No. This is a dedicated, hard-use knife that, if you have that need or that want, would fill that role really, really well. And it has made me curious to look at the Scout. It has made me curious to look more seriously next time I have the opportunity to look at some Medford knives, because I don't know that... Well, I think I want a Scout, that's for sure. But I don't know that I want any of the other models. Although that Fat Daddy, if it wasn't so fat, I might want that guy. That's kind of cool. But it has opened my eyes to the importance of the way you grind, how thin you grind, and the hard use knife in general. This is a lot better introduction than the Hinderer was. And overall, friends, if you have any interest in this, BladeHQ has a few of them left. They'd be happy to sell you one, I'm sure. I also saw some at some other dealers. But pretty cool knife. I'm kind of taken back. I didn't think I'd like it this much. Really didn't. Like I said at the top of the video, I really thought that by the time I hit the render button for this video, I'd be stopping any chance I ever had of having a good relationship with Greg Medford, or BladeHQ for that matter, since they sent the knife over. And, well, maybe not. Because I'm not going to exactly say I'm impressed, but I'm going to say I'm enlightened. The Medford Knife and Tool Production Praetorian. For those of you guys that want a good hard-use knife, it is a good hard-use knife. It's thinly ground, but low ground. It cuts much better than you would believe. It is a knife that you have to work to break in. It's not free like a knife on bearings with a hardened steel lock bar insert. But wow, is it a cool knife. I'm duly impressed. I just said I wasn't impressed, and then I said I was impressed. I'm confused, for guys. I'm going to get out of here. Look for the links down there to get over to BladeHQ. I thank them again for sending a knife over. And you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.